Hello guys, it's Blogan here, and in this lesson I'll show you how to work with Visual Studio. I'll show you how to change the font and appearance of the program, how to create projects and solutions, how to work with different windows of the program, how to create files for writing code, how to change the design of the console, and much more. Let's start. Don't forget to use timecodes if you're interested in a specific topic. In the previous tutorial, we installed Visual Studio and registered our account. Let's launch it. The first window that greets you offers you several things. The first one offers you to clone the repository. The fact is that you can store your projects on special websites, and thanks to this button, you can quickly download and open them. Repositories are a topic that's not related to this course, so forget about this button for the duration of this course. The second one suggests opening an existing project or solution to work with them. You can transfer ready-made projects to your computer and use this button to open them, but they can also be opened thanks to shortcuts, so I personally very rarely use this button. A little later I'll tell you what a project and a solution are in the context of Visual Studio. The third invites you to simply open a folder to work with its contents through Visual Studio. It's hard for me to name a situation where this is useful because I've never used this button, but I'll try to give an example. Imagine that you have a file that you want to edit. It contains code, and Visual Studio, having found out what kind of code it is, can help you edit it, helping you by highlighting various entities in the code and other things. In this case, this button can help, but any file can be opened through Visual Studio by simply right-clicking on it and indicating through which program you want to open it. The fourth, and almost the only useful button for me personally, allows you to create projects. We'll create them today, but a bit later. Also, before viewing the last button, pay attention to the left side of this window. Now, there is only text here that tells you that the history of the projects you open is saved in this part. It's very comfortable. For example, I can work with 3 projects and they will all show up here. You can click on them and Visual Studio will open them immediately. Please know that under the Create a New Project button, there is another, Continue Without a Code. If you click on it, Visual Studio will open without any projects. Let's click on it so I can show you some useful things. This is what the standard window layout looks like in Visual Studio. That is, on top you see menu items, below them is a basic toolbar, on the right is a single solution explorer window, and that's it. Let me show you how to change the Visual Studio theme. There is a Tools button at the top. Click on it and you'll see a drop-down list. Select Options. A window will open in which, by default, the desired Environment General tab will immediately open. The first item in it is the theme that you have selected. I have the standard black theme and will use it for the rest of this course. Besides this, there are several other themes. Also, you can install your themes in Visual Studio. To do this, Google Visual Studio theme extension and you'll find a wide variety of themes. Find the one you like and download it. You will download a Visual Studio extension file that you just need to execute, after which your theme will automatically be added to this list. All you need to do is select it and click OK. I also want to show you how to change fonts in Visual Studio. To do this, in the same window, go to the Fonts and Colors tab. Everything is worth explaining here. At the top, you can choose which part of Visual Studio you want to change the font for. The text editor is the part where the code will be displayed. If you're gone overboard with the settings, there is a Use Defaults button on the right, which returns the standard settings. Below you can select a specific font. I'll use the JetBrains Mono NL font for the code throughout the course. It's not installed on the system by default, but you can download it for free from the official website. On the right, you can specify the font size at 100% scaling. What is this? The thing is, you can make the text bigger and smaller in a text editor. I'll show you that later. That's why I have 12 here. Below is a list of many entities that you can see in the code. Here are collected the entities of all languages that Visual Studio supports, and not only them. For each entity, you can change the color of the text and background. I changed the color of a lot of C++ language entities. To find them, scroll down the list and you'll find entities that start with C++. Therefore, if you write the code that I write, you'll have a different color of these entities, and now you know why. In the future, to make it more pleasant for you to read the code, you can independently change the colors of entities as you like. You probably don't understand these entities right now, and it's okay. Just don't touch them for the time being. Next, I need to solve one problem. When you install Visual Studio, it creates a folder where all your projects will be stored by default, and I personally don't like its location. If you do too, then you can change this. To do this, click Tools again, then Options. Next, in the window, find the Project and Solution tab, and in it, the Location item. Here, you'll see what stupid path Visual Studio chose by default, and you can replace it here. I've created my folder in Documents, so I'm going to choose that. I recommend you to indicate the path where it will be convenient for you to store your projects. Well, don't forget to click OK at the end. Let's move on to these projects. What is it? Imagine that you need to create a program. You know that you can use Visual Studio for this. Your program can have different files with code, files with pictures, music, and so on. All these needs to be stored somewhere. For example, in one main folder. So the folder with your program is a project in Visual Studio. Well, this folder will store not only your program files, but also files that Visual Studio will create for itself in order to correctly display your files in the program and interact with them. Accordingly, if you want to write programs in Visual Studio, you must first create a project. But the terminology doesn't end there. There are situations when you need to write several programs that will somehow interact with each other. For example, in one project you write a server part, in a second you write a client part, in a third you write some kind of library, and all these projects must somehow work with each other. For such situations, Visual Studio offers you concept of solution. The solution is a folder with projects and a shortcut with which you can open all these projects in one group. The solution is also convenient if you want to write several programs, one after another, and at the same time quickly switch between them. For example, if you were given homework that consists of 10 exercises, each exercise can be a separate project, and they all can be grouped into a solution. It turns out that in order to write a program in Visual Studio, you need to create both a solution and a project in it. Let me show you how to do this. Let's get down to the list of all possible projects that you can create. You can close Visual Studio and launch it again to see that very first window, or while in Visual Studio, open it by clicking File, New, Project. Let me close the program and run it again. Now we can finally click Create a new project. By clicking, you'll see a window in which you need to select your project template. The fact is that Visual Studio provides a huge number of already configured projects for different purposes. On the left, you'll see the templates you have recently used. You can click on them so you don't have to search for the templates you need. When you first start, this list will be empty. On the right is a list of all possible templates. We need a completely empty project since we're learning C++ from scratch. To do this, select the C++ language and the console, type in the filters. I'll tell you later what a console is. Here you'll find a template called empty project. That's what we need. There is a search at the top, which can also be used to quickly find project templates if you know their names. Select an empty project and click Next. In the next window, you need to specify the name of your project, the name of the solution in which it will be located, and the location of your solution. There is a checkbox at the bottom that allows you to make the project a solution. This means that you'll have a single folder that contains both the solution and the project. You won't be able to create other projects in it. I won't check the box to show you later how to create multiple projects in one existing solution. I'm going to name the project My First Project and name solution My First Solution. You name them what you want. When finished, click Create, Visual Studio will open, and Solution Explorer should be open on the right. What kind of window is this Solution Explorer? Before answering this question, I want to tell you that all windows in Visual Studio can be opened, closed, snapped to specific points, and resized. Now I'm showing you what I can do with this window. This can be done with any windows. Try playing with this window to see for yourself what you can do with it. It's just that very soon you'll become familiar with the other windows and you may want to change them to make it more convenient for you. Also know that by default you have another window inside the Solution Explorer, Git Changes. You can embed some windows into others and thereby make them build into each other. Try removing the Git Changes window and closing it so it doesn't bother you. We won't be using it during the course, so I'll put it away. If you don't have the Solution Explorer window or you accidentally closed it, then you can reopen it in the View Solution Explorer tab. This tab contains all the windows that are in Visual Studio. We won't discuss even half of them because we don't need them. If you've been tricky with Windows and want to return everything to its default state, then you need to go to this Window, Reset Window Layout tab. This button will reset all windows and return to the default view. Let's explore the Solution Explorer window. In it, like on every other window, there are buttons on the top right for changing and linking the window. If you haven't already done so, you can play with them and make Solution Explorer the window of your dreams. Below, you'll see the icon for the solution itself, the name of the solution, as well as the contents of all the projects that are included in this solution. I only have one project now, so that's all we see. Before exploring this window further, let's see what folders and files were created in our File Explorer. To do this, you can right-click on the solution and select Open Folder in File Explorer. Here we'll notice this shortcut of our solution. We can close Visual Studio and open our solution directly from it. Give it a try. You may also notice a folder with the name of our project. From this it follows what I said. The solution is a folder with your projects and their launched file. You can open the solution file through a text editor and you'll see that it's just a set of text settings for the correct display of all projects in Visual Studio. But in fact, there is another hidden folder here. You must enable the display of hidden files and folders to see it. The fastest way to do this in Windows 11 is to click here, View, Show, Hidden Files. And here it is in front of you, .vs. It stores more detailed settings for each project. The larger the project and the greater the number of projects in the solution, the more memory this folder takes up. If you want to transfer your project from one computer to another, then first look at how much this folder takes up. If its volume suits you, then copy it too. If not, you can delete it. Visual Studio creates this folder every time it starts, but certain things will be removed if you delete this folder. There is no point in discussing this folder in detail in my course, just be aware of its existence. Let me hide hidden files again, because I more like files when they're hidden. Now let's move on to the project folder. It will initially contain 3 files, of which we are only interested in one, the one with the extension .vcxproj. This is your project's shortcut. Perhaps initially your operating system will not understand which program to open this file, like mine. To solve this problem, simply manually tell Visual Studio to open the file and select Always, so that the operating system remembers how to open it. When you launch, you'll see the same picture, a solution with your project. The other 2 files store the project settings. We're not interested in them. Let's return to the Solution Explorer window. In it, you see only one project. I'd like to note that I don't recommend that you rename your projects and solution from this window. You can do this in several ways. For example, by right-clicking and selecting Rename, or select a project or solution and press F2, or simply double-click on the project or solution with the left mouse button. But the problem is that your renaming will only happen in Visual Studio. You will see the old names in File Explorer. Therefore, if you don't like the names of the project or solution, it's better to create them again. You may also notice that there is some kind of list in your project. Let me quickly go through all the items. References are needed so that you can link several projects. For example, you have one project, this is a program, and the second is a library with tools that you want to use in the program. I won't show you how to use this function anytime soon, so don't pay attention to it for now. External dependencies. At this point, you'll see all the C++ standard library files that you'll use. Now, this folder is empty because you haven't even started writing code, but as soon as you start connecting files from the library, you'll immediately notice them here. Why do you need this? I have no idea. I've never used it. Header files. All header files are usually stored in this folder. These are special C++ language files, which I'll talk about in a specific lesson. For now, let this folder remain empty. Resource files. This folder usually stores all resources such as icons, cursors, music, sounds, pictures, videos, binary files, and everything that's not related to C++. We'll not touch this folder throughout the course, except perhaps in the lesson where we'll write and read information from files. Source files. This is where the C++ language .cpp files are stored. That is, the files that are compiled and in which you write most of the code. I want to note two things. Firstly, all these folders are not in the File Explorer. They are shown only in this window and are created for possible grouping of your program files. You can easily remove them from the project. There is a button at the top that shows what is actually in your project folder. If you click it, you'll see a blank space because the project settings files are not included in this list. In normal projects, developers immediately turn on this button and sort their files into folders the way they like. These 3-piece folders are enough for us, so I will only work with them. Secondly, you're not required to place your files the way these folders advise. These are just folders. Let's continue. If you want to remove a project from Solutions, then there is a small detail you need to know. If you try to do this in Visual Studio, you'll notice the word remove. Remove doesn't mean delete. Therefore, your project disappears from Solution, but remains in File Explorer. If you want to delete it completely, you can delete it from File Explorer afterwards. The main thing is not to do the opposite. If you first delete the project from File Explorer, then in Visual Studio you'll have problems with its work and display. Okay, the project was deleted. Now we have an empty solution. Since a solution can have any number of projects, we can add a new one. Let's add 3 new projects to our solution. This can be done in the following way. Right-click on your solution, select Add, New Project. A familiar window will open in which you can select any project. I'll select the empty project as always. This time in its settings, you may notice that there are no solution settings because the solution itself already exists and we're adding projects specifically to it. Let's try to create 3 projects named Project 1, Project 2, Project 3. After they are created, you'll notice all of them in the Solution Explorer window. But the first one stands out. Its title is in bold font. What does it mean? And the fact is that when you press the Program Launch button, this particular project will be launched and not others. You may need to start other projects. To do this, you need to make them as startup projects. There are several ways to do this. First, you can right-click on the project and select Set as Startup Project. You'll see how the font of its name has changed. Now, when you press the Start button, it will start. Secondly, you may feel discomfort because you'll get tired of constantly switching projects. In this case, you can make sure that the project you're in is launched. To do this, right-click on the solution and select Properties. In the window that appears, select Current Selection and click OK. Now, projects switch themselves depending on which you're in. That's sorted out. I only need 1 project for almost the entire course, so I'll delete the other 2. If you watched my lesson number 2 when I said that C++ programs must have files with the .cpp extension, then you understand that we need to manually create this file because now our project is completely empty. Let's finally create our first .cpp file in which we'll write the code for most of the lessons in this course. To do this, right-click on the source files, add, new item. Know that you can do this faster by pressing the keyboard combination Ctrl plus Shift plus A. I use this all the time. You'll see a window where Visual Studio thinks you want to create a CPP file. You can click Show All Templates and see the entire list of possible files. Select .cpp. Give the file the name you want. I would advise naming it main because it will contain a function called main. Click Add and the text editor will open your file in the center of the screen, and on the right in Solution Explorer you'll see your file. Let's study the text editor in more detail. A text editor will be a place where you spend most of your time learning C++ because it's where you write code. At the top, you can see which file is currently open. This is our main CPP file. If you have multiple files open, there will be several tabs here that you can switch between. You can also pin a tab or close it. To reopen it, you need to click on your file in Solution Explorer. You can write something in your text editor and you'll see a few important things. To the left of each line is its number. This is very convenient because you can ask other people which line you are interested in, or the compiler itself will tell you which line contains an error. Also look at the yellow bar on the left. The yellow bar appears on each line that has been changed but not saved. Since I just added a few new lines, all of them are not saved. If there is at least one unsaved line, then at the top next to the file name, you'll see an asterisk, which signals that there are unsaved changes in the file. You can save your file by clicking File, Save Main CPP, or Save All, or simply by pressing the key combination Ctrl plus Shift plus S, which I always use, and then you'll notice two things. Firstly, the asterisk on the file has been removed. Secondly, the yellow line turned green, which means that these lines are saved. If you change any lines or add new ones, they'll again be yellow. If you close the project and open it again, this bar will disappear. Now let's talk about errors. As you write code, the Visual Studio compiler may underline text where you make a mistake. For example, here. If you hover your mouse over this text, you'll see a description of the error. If you have a very long file and there are many lines of code in it, then you can also look for errors along the line on the right. Saved or modified rows are also displayed there. Of course, now you don't understand the errors, but when we write code in C++, you'll understand them better. And the last thing I want to talk about is scaling the text from the bottom left of the editor. You can write percentages here manually, move the mouse wheel with pressing Ctrl key to adjust them, or select one of the ready-made options. In order for you to see my code clearly, I will use 180% zoom. Let's imagine that you have written some code and want to run it. It would be more correct to say compile this code and run it. Visual Studio has a separate code compilation feature. To do this, click Build, Build Project 1, or use the keyboard shortcut Ctrl plus B. This will start compiling your project. If there are several files in it, they will be all compiled, if not compiled yet. When you first press this button, first the output window will appear at the bottom and then the error list window. The thing is that we didn't write the code in C++, so the compiler doesn't want to compile our text. We'll look at these two windows very soon. Let's start by writing some normal short C++ code for now so we can run the program. This will be the following construction: int main with open round brackets and curly brackets. I will explain this code in the next lesson. However, this is the minimum correct code to run the program. You can try to compile the project again and you'll see that everything went fine. How to see it? Go to File Explorer and you see what you've created. You'll have an x64 folder in which there will be a debug folder in which you'll find many files that are needed to debug your program. We'll also talk about debugging in a separate lesson. Where is the executable file located? It's in the folder with your solution. Here. We can try to run this program, but we won't see anything. Personally, a window appeared and immediately closed. The thing is that I wrote code that doesn't do anything, so the program started and immediately closed. But running programs this way is not convenient. You can run them directly from Visual Studio. To do this, click Debug, Start without debugging, or use the combination Ctrl plus F5. Your program will start. This is the console window. We'll talk about it at the end of this lesson. Now you should know the following. When you've completed the code, when you've written the code, you need to compile it. This can be done with combination Ctrl plus B. When you've compiled the code, you can run the program by using the Ctrl plus F5 combination. But you should also know the following. If your code is not compiled and you want to run the program, then the Ctrl plus F5 combination will first compile the project and then immediately run it. Thanks to this, it's not necessary to manually run the compilation all the time before launching. Also know that Visual Studio itself pauses at the end of the program so that it doesn't close immediately. Therefore, throughout the course, I will run programs in this way. Okay, now let's talk about those windows that appear below during compilation. First, let's look at the output window. By default, it displays information about the compilation of your project. Let's click Build, Rebuild Project. This will force the compiler to recompile the project. Below, in small font, you will see that your project has started to compile. Then it will be clarified which project is being compiled, after which you'll see the name of the file that was compiled. If there are many files, then each of them will be shown here. If the compilation is successful, you'll see the location of the executable file, the number of successfully compiled projects, and the compilation time. Over time, you'll notice that errors that you make in your code, which appear either at the compilation stage or at the linking stage, are also displayed here. That's all you need to know at this stage of the learning. Near this window, there is also your future favorite error list window. It will display the errors that you'll make in the code and more. For example, I'm about to write rubbish and several errors appear here. Each line contains an error code, which you can Google on the internet, then a description of the error, then the name of the project, file, and the line where this error exists. Thanks to this, you'll be better able to understand where and what mistake you made. But unfortunately, compilers don't always produce clear error descriptions, which is why you'll have to gain experience to understand what they meant. Throughout the course, I'll show you various errors in the code. Well, let's move on to the last topic of today's lesson. Let's run our program again. A console window will open in front of you. We'll work with this window throughout the course. We'll also not be creating graphical applications throughout the course. Why? Because to create them, you need to know not only C++, but also many other tools for writing graphical programs. And since my course is dedicated only to the C++ language, we'll use the console window to process information. It's quite simple because it can input information in text and output it in text. No sounds, no images, no mouse cursor. Let me first explain you the text that is displayed on the screen. If your program completed successfully, we will talk about program success in more detail in the next lesson, then at the end you should see text that says that such and such a program, which has such a number, completed with code 0. Code 0 is considered to be the successful completion code of the program. After which, Visual Studio also adds the inscription, press any key to close this window. This is the very pause before closing the program. If you press any key, the pause will be removed and the program will close. This console has many settings. I want to show you the appearance settings because my console and yours are different since I changed its color and text font. To go to settings, click the down arrow here and select settings. In the window that appears on the left, click on defaults, appearance, and here you can change the color theme, font size, and more. After setting, don't forget to click save at the bottom of the window. Now we know how to work with Visual Studio at the level we need, how to create projects in which we'll write code, and became familiar with the console window that will haunt us throughout the course. In the next lesson, I'll tell you what kind of code I wrote, tell you about the main function thanks to which your program will run, and I'll show main functions varieties. So, that's the end of this lesson. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, you can support me by liking this video, writing a comment under it, subscribing to the channel, donating using the link in the video description, or becoming a sponsor of my channel. All these things popularize my channel and motivate me to continue recording lessons for you. Goodbye.